ARE Podcast, episode number 25.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. ARE Podcast, where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host, David Doucette.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the ARE Podcast, episode 25 to be exact, goal setting for young architects. So if you're an old architect, you may not be interested in this episode. If you're old like Eric and I, you know, and how to achieve your dreams. So we're going to get right into it today, and joined by my co-host, Eric Corey Freed.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Do you have snow up there?
It is snowy and icy up here in Portland, Oregon. It's freezing.
And Happy New Year to everybody. And you're having some kind of weird standoff thing happening near you, right?
Well, it's one of those things that you roll your eyes that whenever Oregon is in the news for something negative, you know.
Right. All right, so today we're going to talk about goal setting. Now, way back on episode 6, a couple of years ago, we talked about goals, and it's actually one of the more popular podcast episodes we've done. So since we're starting a new year, if you haven't listened to episode 6, by all means, go listen to it. And if you're trying to figure out if we recorded episode 6 2 years ago, and 2 years later we're only on episode 25, don't worry about that. It's just the way it is. Just the way it goes sometimes.
Don't do the math. Math is hard.
Yeah, architects don't like math anyway. That's what structural engineers are for. So tell me, what are we going to talk about this episode, and maybe how it's different from the episode 6 we did, which if you haven't listened to it, definitely listen to episode 6.
Well, episode 6 was so popular, but in that time, I think we both learned how to talk about goals in a way that everyone, but especially a young career-minded professional architect, would want to learn. 2 years ago, we discussed really how to define goals, how to distinguish between goals and what might just be a habit, how to prioritize your goals, and how to adjust them so that way you're stepping outside your comfort zone, but not too much that they're unrealistic. So the 2 years ago episode was good, and this really complements and builds on that.
Okay, so episode 6, check it out. And so we are starting today with identifying and setting goals. Is that what we're going to start with?
Yes, and really how to quantify them in a way that you can put them into action.
And this is, obviously this is a new year, but you could be listening to this in the dog days of summer in August, and that's okay, because all of this stuff applies. It's just New Year's is a popular time because that's when people reflect and set new goals, but we can set goals anytime during the year.
Yeah, it's just that this, it's a good time to kind of think about the year ahead, and maybe also what you didn't accomplish last year that you thought you would have. Maybe you're not as far along in your AREs or in your career as you'd like to be. So this is really for anybody who wants to move forward in their career and really be successful.
So why does the new year trigger new resolutions, do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a tradition, but secondly, it's also, it's kind of a chance to reflect. I even think the time off that we get around work and everything and with being with family it almost forces you to reflect on what you've done and what you're going to be doing. It's almost like ending something and then starting another marathon again. Okay, 365 more days to go. Ready? Break. And then you want to know where you're headed to. You want to know where you're going. To me, people that don't have clear goals, it's almost like they're in a car and they're just driving around. They're just kind of, let's go that way, let's go this way, as opposed to really saying, I want to get to 123 Main Street in Sacramento.
Well, it's like, jumping in a boat and trying to sail, across the Atlantic Ocean. If you don't have a destination in mind, you're probably just going to drift. You're not going to get there,
Right.
I think what's important too in this process is it's a chance to reflect. It's a chance to set goals and look ahead, but it's also a chance to look back on the past year and say, oh, what didn't we do that we could have done? Or what didn't we do that darn it, I didn't do it last year. I'm going to do it this year. And I think one of those is, taking the AREs.
Exactly. And obviously a lot of people listening to this are probably thinking about or working on or in the middle of taking the AREs. And that's an amazing goal. And Aubrey just wrote this great blog post about how to set that as a goal and tips that we found to help. And she even identified kind of 3 key points to implement if you're setting that as a goal for yourself to pass the AREs this year. What
is the title of that post? Do you have it handy?
It's how to set the goal of passing the RE and being licensed.
Okay, yeah. So
exclamation point.
So is today all about passing the ARE and setting the goal, or are we going to talk about other stuff?
No, we're going to talk about other stuff too. We're going to talk about larger goals as well, and how to define what is a goal versus what is just something that's fun, and really how to track your time and manage your goals in a way that you can implement them.
Okay, so this is a life lesson podcast episode.
Yes.
And as we've mentioned before, writing things down, writing goals down. I know from experience, if you don't do them, they don't happen. And I've certainly got a few goals last year that didn't get accomplished. I got some goals that did. And, we're never going to achieve all the goals we set out. And that's kind of not the point. It's really giving us the direction of something we can work towards and check off the ones we can.
Was getting a haircut a goal of yours at all last year?
I think I did that a couple of times, actually. Shaving is a different issue.
Yes. Well, one step at a time.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about 168 hours. Seems like when we think of these hours, like I think of, is it 128 hours with, what's his name?
The guy, James Franco?
Yeah, James Franco. It's 128 hours, right?
Yeah, this is a little different. This is 168 hours. 168 hours is 7 days a week times 24 hours. It's the number of hours you have in a typical week, including Saturday and Sunday. 168 hours.
Okay, and so to get our whatever we want to get done in a week, we have 168 hours in which to accomplish all of that, right?
Right.
Okay.
And it's a great place to start, because I think when you start tracking how you spent last week's 168 hours, you start to identify patterns that you didn't realize were there. So first of all, there's a lot of big chunks that are already going to eat away at that 168 hours. You're going to sleep, hopefully, 7 or 8 hours a night, and you should, right? It's good to get sleep. So if you're assuming you're sleeping 7 hours a night, your 168 drops to about 119. And then on top of that,
actually, mine would drop more, because if I'm only getting 7 hours of sleep, then I'm not as productive in those other hours. So now it's actually gonna be even less productive hours. I need 8 hours. Yeah, I need 8 hours of sleep. When I was younger, I didn't, but yeah, 8 hours is a good. I think that's what the experts say. 8 hours.
Then you're down to 112, right?
Right.
And so suddenly the 168 is cut down to 112, and then let's say you're working a full-time job at a firm. So there's another 40 or 50 hours, at least, not even counting the time it takes for you to drive there or take the bus, or even the time you spend lunch, because those are times you could be doing something else. So I'm not even going to count those. So, going from 168 minus sleep, minus working a full-time job, and then minus things such as bathing, eating, doing your hair, plucking your nose hair, whatever you're doing, you're down, maybe if you're lucky, that 168 drops to 55 hours a week. That's free. That's your time. 55 hours, at most, possibly.
Is there that much? Yeah, because I guess we're thinking like weekends, obviously, we get a little more. I'm just trying to think. So if there's 55 free hours in a week, how many is that per day? That's going to be about 8 per day.
It sounds like a lot. It's about 6.8, 7 or so hours a day, but you have more on the weekends. But 55 hours sounds like a lot of time, but yet most of us, in fact, probably everybody is always complaining about how strapped they are for their time, and how they don't have time. Oh, I don't have time to do this, time to do that. As much as 55 hours seems like a lot, the reason we're all strapped for time is because we're lacking focus and we're lacking clear goals and we're getting distracted.
Yeah, we're not being efficient with this 55 free hours of time we get each week, which is a lot, actually. When you consider we work 40 hours a week or say 50 hours a week, if we think, okay, well, we have that the same amount of time we're working, we have that as sort of free time to be efficient with. And obviously it's more, maybe it's, what would that be? Maybe about 5 hours during the week and, more hours. So 5 times 5 is 25. So then another 20 hours on the weekend.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time, actually, if you're being efficient with it. If you're not, it's easy to waste it.
Right. And, you had friends that, proudly, I gave up my television. I don't watch television. They're very proud about it. And their first thing they always say is, I can't believe how much time I have now.
That's true.
They have all this time. Or, about, if you've been in a power outage and you've had no internet, how it seemed like an eternity because you had all of this time. And so it's very easy to get distracted. But one of the things that I like to think about is that you and I have the same amount of time in our week that Thomas Edison had or that Frank Lloyd Wright had. Right? We have the same 168 hours to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And that's why it's important to track what you do in a week, to track your time and keep a log. And in the blog post, we even had included a link to a kind of a PDF that you can download to use to track it.
This is the one that you wrote?
Yes.
What's that one called?
Goal setting for young architects.
Okay, and we'll link that in the show notes. So it is interesting to think that that the great people who came before us, we all had the same amount of time. So it's like, well, how are some people, able to accomplish more than other people? And it's I think it just comes down to using time wisely and not taking it for granted.
Right. I mean, a lot of us focus, especially me, we become obsessed with productivity. What are better tools we can use, better software, better devices to help us more productive so we use our time better. But the truth is that it's not just about using your time more wisely. It's really about planning your time and applying it towards your goals. And like I said, distractions, the other week I spent, now granted it was over Christmas, but I spent a week rewatching all of Game of Thrones. There's 50 episodes of Game of Thrones, and I watched all of them in a week. So if I had 55 free hours, I used 50 of them to rewatch Game of Thrones. And afterwards, I felt great afterwards because it was exciting. But afterwards, I didn't get anything done that week. I didn't get to work on anything. And
I know. No.
and it was, it's because here I had my time and I chose to spend it on Game of Thrones. But it goes quickly.
But there's the other side of that is because downtime is important as well, right? Whether it's our day off, or hiking or watching Game of Thrones, shutting our brains down, and that's important. And I think we're able to do that if we're sort of if we kind of know, okay, this is my break, and now I go back to the grind, or I go back to being efficient. So it's not like we're on 24/7.
Last year I set a goal for myself. I wanted to read a book a month. If I just set that goal, it wouldn't have happened. In fact, I'd had that goal in past years and didn't do it. And so last year, 2015, January 2015, okay, I want to read a book a month. Well, I realized I didn't know what books I was going to read. So I took the time to pick out the 12 books.
Right.
I also didn't have a time during the day that I was going to read them. So I realized the best time for me was actually at night as winding down. I needed it to kind of turn my brain off. So before I go to bed, I read, and I do it on the iPad. So I just read, and right before I go to sleep. And it also kind of tires me out too. So not only am I getting the reading done, and then I'm having weird dreams about whatever book I'm reading, but I'm chipping away at it. And sure enough, I'm doing about a book a month. And to me, it was a great goal in that it was realistic. Right, it wasn't like I was going to do a book a week. It was a book a month. It was kind of easy, and there were some months that I read too.
Well, I think too, it's one thing to have a goal, but then we have to have action steps, and we have to put things in place to achieve a goal. For example, I just launched the coaching program for California supplemental exam, and the real goal I have with that program is to get people to schedule their exam date early on, right at the beginning of the process, and then take the exam. Obviously, the end goal is to become a licensed architect in California, but the sort of the main, I'd say, real goal is to take the exam, because once you do that, you eventually pass it. The byproduct is you achieving your ultimate goal of taking the exam. So it's like your goal of the books, one a month. The real goal is sort of you sitting down to figure out the 12 you're going to read, and you're taking action steps that then lead to you achieving your goal.
Right, and failing to write those action steps down and figure them out, it became this insurmountable mental block for me in previous years, where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to read. Like, I knew that was a goal, to read a book a month, but wait, what book am I reading? And forget it. I'll just give up on it. So we do a lot of things that I call unintentional goals. We do a lot of things that, whether we realize it or not, every minute we spend doing something is part of some larger goal that we might not even realize we have. So, for example, if you spent 5 hours at the auto show last week, right? That's a lot of time. But you might not realize it, but it's part of some larger goal you have. Maybe it's to learn about cars. Maybe it's to switch professions into something else, right? If you're spending 2 hours a day reading about 3D printing, I mean, that's a lot of time. That adds up pretty quickly, but you're obsessed with it, and you're just like, I want to learn everything I can, and you start practicing with it.
Which sounds like you've been doing that.
Yeah, which I've been doing. So I asked myself, well, what is that about? Why am I doing that? I mean, I'm spending a lot of time obsessed with 3D printing. Why am I doing that? How is it part of a larger goal? And so you have to start to identify what that is. And this really starts to where you can start to use some of the past podcasts that we discussed to help you figure out these unintentional goals, right? We did a podcast on moonlighting that I really loved. Why do you want to moonlight? Right. Are you unhappy in your firm? And if so, why? Can you identify that? We did a podcast on should you work at a large firm or a small firm? Well, why do you care which one it is? How does it fit into your larger career goals? We did one on getting promoted and on beefing up your resume. Well, why do you want to get promoted? So these unintentional goals, these things that you're spending your time on, really start to inform what your true intentions are, what you're prioritizing, right? So to me, it's kind of a peek into your secret desires that you're not saying out loud to yourself. So you want to start to track your time and start to figure out, what are my unintentional goals? What am I spending a lot of time on? Am I wasting time spending time with friends? Is a goal of mine to keep in touch with old college buddies? And if it isn't, then maybe I can manage it a little better, and realize that I don't have to say yes to every invitation to go out or something. You can start to look at how you're spending your time and look at how to manage it better.
So what you're really talking about, and I think it's hugely important, is awareness and being aware of what you do, being aware of your intentions, being aware of what you want. And it may be, you develop this awareness and you may not start hanging out with sort of friends that you don't really have a connection with. But maybe you're developing new friendships with people who are on this sort of ARE journey, or who are sort of on career architect paths, because you might have more common interests with them. One of the things I started to do last year is I get this little notebook. It's one of the Moleskine ones, which are fantastic books. And this is like their tiny one. And I thought it was too small. It's, 4 by 5. I carry it with me everywhere. And I want to preface it by, as you know, Eric, we both are sort of technology nerds, and Evernote and Dropbox and all of that stuff. And I use Evernote for sort of taking notes, but for really sort of sitting and thinking, Evernote on my phone doesn't work for me. Like, I carry the little notebook and I write stuff down. So I carry this everywhere, and I would go through a period where 2 weeks I wouldn't carry it. And then I would look back in the past 2 weeks when I carry it again and be like, I didn't accomplish anything. I was in a vacuum because I didn't have my little notebook to sort of just sit and think every day. So I always feel better when I have the notebook, and I just write little notes down. And, we're architects. We need to sort of be visual and just write and draw out little things. And so that's huge for me.
Well, you bring up a great point. I remember early on, I won, and this is kind of silly, but I was in my 20s and I won a free Tony Robbins seminar.
Right.
And at first I wasn't going to go. That's not for me. That's silly. And my friends were like, "Are you kidding? That's like a $3,000 value. You won this in this drawing.
Right.
You have to. I mean, I'll take it if you don't." I'm like, "Okay." So I went, and I, and since then, even other kind of motivational speakers, they always say the same thing. Whether it's Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, any of those kind of motivational guys, like how to achieve your goals and get things done. It always starts with write down your goals. Don't just say them out loud.
Right.
Write them down and carry them with you. And I remember that I was 25 years old. I'm in this giant hall. There must be.
Oh, so 3, you did go.
Oh yeah, I went, and there was 3,000 people in this room, and he's on the front of the stage, and he says, "Take out your goals and show them to me." And half the audience reached into their wallet and pulled out a piece of paper and were waving it in the air. And I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know what my goals are."
So you didn't have anything to wave in the air.
No, these people not only knew their goals but carried them around with them on paper.
Yep.
So I realized my entire life was unintentional. Everything I was doing, I was getting distracted. Even with my even though I thought I was doing work things, people would say, "Do you want to build a model with me?" "Oh yeah, sure." "Do you want to enter a competition?" "Oh, okay." And
right.
I was happy because I was working on architecture, but why did I want to enter that competition? What would winning mean to me? Is it important to me? Is it important to invest the 80 hours or whatever it would take to win that competition or at least place in it? And so I had to learn how to make clear goals. So I knew what to say yes to and I knew what to say no to. And it starts, as you say, with writing it down and then revising it. Like with my example of I wanted to read a book a month and your example of carrying the notebook, you'll try things and they won't work. I mean, I love Evernote too, but it's a pain in the ass to type on a little phone.
I tried, and my goals actually are in Evernote. And your goals are living, breathing document, right? We should always be looking at them and stuff. And I tried one year just having them in Evernote, and it didn't work as well because they're in my phone, and you can't sort of live and breathe and scribble out and write them down. It was just sort of, it's not as active. It's like you just put them there, and they just. It's like you file it away almost, which is why I like the notebook.
Hand. I was going to show you. So I wrote them by hand. Right, I do it by hand on graph paper. I don't know why. I just like it on graph paper, but I do it by hand and write it first, and then later, once it's kind of final, then I'll type it to make it neat. But I like the act of writing it on paper. I need it.
It engages the brain,
Right. I need to do it that way. But for other people, it'll work differently. But I remember I tried different things. I remember I bought a Bluetooth keyboard specifically so I could carry it with me and then type things on my phone,
right.
And keep notes on my phone. But it was easier just to, like you say, have a pad of paper or a notebook with me.
It's because what we want to do is sort of be living and breathing and looking at these things, many times a month. If we just sort of put them in a computer and look at them every 6 months, chances are nothing's going to happen. They're going to be the same when we looked at them, 6 months later. We got to be interacting. We got to be revising them, and yeah, that's why I feel sort of lost if I don't have the notebook now.
Which is why we are so unintentional in the things that we do, and yet they must fulfill some goal. If I'm spending 2 hours a day looking at 3D printing and parametric modeling or weird stuff like that, it's obviously fulfilling some goal of mine that I might not have realized yet. So you almost have to be really brutally honest with yourself and start to say what I was at Greenbuild, the biggest green building conference, right? Just a couple months ago. I go every year. I know why I go. Right, I know what goals it fulfills for me. But everybody I'd meet, I'd say, "Why are you here? What do you want to get out of being here?" And I was shocked at a lot of people like, "I don't know. I thought I was supposed to be."
Right.
Well, you're missing an opportunity. No, you're here because you want to be the green guy in your firm. You're here because you want to launch your own green sustainability practice. You have a goal, you just don't realize it yet.
Well, and I think it ties back to the sort of 55 free hours we have a week. Do we want to make something of those 55 hours, or do we want them to just waste them every week doing the same old stuff and just, I don't know, whether it's mindless watching TV or just wasting time. And I think you mentioned earlier, when you were younger, you're trying to figure out, once you start writing things down, you can figure out what you say yes to and what you say no to. And it's hugely important. And I've only realized this in the last few years. The power to say no to things is huge. Like, it's a very powerful thing because, as you gain more responsibility, everybody wants your attention. And you have to develop a sense of saying no. But you can only do that if you know what sort of your goals are and your priorities are, because then you can say, like, oh no, that opportunity doesn't fit into where I'm headed, so I have to decline that.
The other day I was asked to join a board of directors for a nonprofit. And I think I kind of shocked them a little because I said, what is it that you expect of your board, of each board member? And they said, well, we want you to come to one meeting a month. Well, how long are the meetings? And they said, well, it's usually 2 hours, and then we'll go to dinner afterwards. So you're looking at 4 hours a month. And so I said, well, no, thank you. I mean, I was very polite about it.
Right.
But I didn't want to invest 4 hours a month in a nonprofit because I knew my goals, and I knew that I wasn't contributing anything that someone else couldn't. They could have found other people that would bring the same things to the board. I even have, and I wrote it down, but I have a list of kind of criteria that I use of how to, why to say yes to something like that. If I'm going to join a board, I want it to be that I'm bringing something that nobody else can bring, whether it's an insight or an experience or something like that. And I also want to make sure that being part of that board will help me achieve my goals in terms of networking or opening up new opportunities. And otherwise, as much as I might, and I said this to her, I said, I love your mission. I love what you're doing. I'll be a supporter for the organization. I'll promote what you guys are doing, but I can't join the board. And but I knew it wasn't tying into my larger goals, and I didn't want to invest that time. But it's very easy for someone to say, oh, I'm flattered. Yes, of course I'll join the board. And suddenly they're spending at least 5 hours a month, if not much more.
And probably more because, those sort of 4 hour commitments, they're always longer and, they require mental brain space. So they require a few hours a month of just probably mental brain space thinking about whatever it is. And that's just, so now you're up to 7 or 10 hours that you're spending time on that does nothing to achieve your goal.
And, and then you come home from the board meeting and then you have the dinner afterwards and you've been social for now 4 hours. And the last thing you want to do is then, do more work. So then you're in it's 10 o'clock at night and you're in wind down mode. Right. And so suddenly this one board meeting and this one commitment is starting to trigger the rest of your activities for that day and how you spend the rest of the evening. So you end up just kind of flicking through blogs or going on Facebook or reading or something just to kind of shut your brain down, and then you go to bed. So it does add up very quickly. So that's what I mean by unintentional goals, things that we're doing unintentionally.
So our unintentional goals, which I like this idea, are they bad things or are they good things? Like, do we want unintentional goals?
Well, I think we all have them. Like we just got in April we got a big dog, a pit bull, and we spent a lot of time with the dog because the dog has to be walked and loved, and and then we have to. The thing stinks after, so we got to bathe it every week. So of my 168 hours, of which only 55 is free, now I'm spending probably 2 hours. At least 2 hours of the week dealing with the dog, if not more. But I choose to because I love that connection to animals. I love what she contributes to our family. I love teaching my daughter about responsibility, feeding the dog and caring for it. So it's worth it to me. But I knew why I wanted it.
So
it wasn't unintentional. I knew what it fulfilled. Otherwise, it could be a distraction. You have to have a lot of diligence and discipline to bring things into your life. And so I take that very seriously.
So do we want to take unintentional goals once we realize them? And again, this goes back to just awareness, an awareness of what we're doing and what we're working on. Is the idea unintentional goals become goals, or are they just sort of, oh, okay.
So let's say you've been fiddling around with, you went out and bought an iPad Pro and the Apple Pencil. Well, why? What do you want it for? What are you going to do with it? Well, if you did it because you wanted to start watercoloring, why did you want to start watercoloring? Or if you wanted to kind of paint your renderings, your 3D models, Well, why? I keep asking why and growing it. So this idea where I just bought it because I had some extra money and I went out and bought it, but I don't know why. You want to convert that into a tangible goal. Well, you bought it because you want to get good at Rhino, or you want to get good at Photoshop, or you want to get good at Illustrator, and so you were going to use this as a platform to do that. Now that you know that that's why you bought it, and you're being honest with yourself, suddenly these intentional goals you can start to tie into something larger.
Well, and that actually ties into purpose and doing things with purpose, which I think once we have awareness, we start to see these things, and then we can do things with purpose. For example, if I'm buying the iPad Pro, why am I buying it? What's the purpose of it? If I'm not really sure, then it's probably not worth me buying it. So it's being working with purpose, working with awareness, and as a result, we'll become more efficient with the 55 hours of free time we have a week.
Exactly. That's the idea. Because, you're going to buy this iPad Pro, and is it going to be yet another thing that is going to distract you and not utilize your 55 hours? Or knowing that you bought it to learn watercolor, would you then say, okay, I'm going to spend 4 hours every Saturday to practice Photoshop on the iPad Pro?
Exactly. Yeah, if you want just a bigger screen you can sit on your couch and do more Facebook on, then you're going to spend more time on Facebook and just wasting time,
Right.
So what is it with that goals are not wishes?
A lot of people think goals are wishes, and they write them as such. They say, I wish I had my own firm. That's not a goal. It's a wish. Because you haven't done the three things that it takes to make it a goal. You haven't made something that's obtainable and clear. You haven't made something that's specific, and you haven't set a deadline and why you want it. So, for instance, you don't say, "I wish I had my own firm someday." First of all, it's meaningless. You would change that to, "I will have my own." What type of firm? Residential firm, commercial firm, healthcare, consulting, right? Specific. I will have it within 3 years by 2019. So suddenly now it's specific, it has a deadline, and it's obtainable. Why do you want your own firm? That's the last part of the goal. So goals are not to be wishes. You don't say, I want to fly like Superman. Because it's not obtainable. It's not real. Nobody flies. But if you said, well, I'd like to mimic the feeling of flight, and I want to get a pilot's license, well, suddenly that's an obtainable goal. I want to get a pilot's license. When do you want it? By this date. Why do you want it? So I can, impress people. Whatever it is.
Well, there's sort of a trend that I hope our listeners are starting to sense here, that if there's two people, one who both want to say pass the ARE, for example. One is just sort of wandering around aimless, doesn't have any kind of plan, so doesn't really know what to work on. But they really want to pass the ARE, but they're not working efficiently. Then you have the other person who is aware, they're doing things with purpose, so we already know they're more efficient. And as a result, they're writing their goals down, they're checking in with their goals. If I'm going to bet on who's going to take the exam or who's going to complete the AREs first, it should be obvious the person who's taking this seriously, who's being efficient, who's working with purpose, of course they're going to complete them first. And the other person's still going to just be wandering around.
It's really about wording. And, I meet a lot of people. I wish I had my license. God, and they almost say it like regretfully. Gosh, I wish I was licensed. There's a huge difference between saying I wish I was licensed to saying I will pass all 7 divisions of the ARE by the end of 2016. And even better, saying I will take a division every other month and realize, well, that'll, 7 divisions every other month, that's 14 months, but I'll finish by February 2017.
Right.
So suddenly you went from I wish to every 2 months I'm taking a test and I'm scheduling it. And you know that now. You then also can start to see how this, what's not a wish is now a goal, and how this goal starts to organize itself. Right? I'm going to pass all 7 divisions of the area. I know the what, and I know the when, and I even know the how. So then you can start to assign tasks to how you would do this.
Jim Rohn, who I think is fantastic, and I only discovered fairly recently, And he's actually the guy who taught Tony Robbins and motivated him. And so he's one of the original really founders of this business improvement and life improvement stuff. He's got a quote that says, "I used to say, I sure hope things will change. Then I learned that the only way things are going to change for me is when I change." So instead of just hoping and, like you're saying, wishing, you have to do it. Like, you got to take the steps to actually do it. Sitting here hoping or wishing or, God, I hope I pass this exam. It's like, well, what are you doing to make that happen?
I think Jim Rome or probably a lot of them said, hope is not a plan.
Right.
Right, because it's not. Yeah, I'm sure you hope for a lot of things. I hope that a bag of money falls into my lap, but it's not likely. But I could probably make a bag of money appear in front of me if I start to do these things.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Oh, so I was just gonna say. So in order for goals not to be wishes, they need to be obtainable, specific, and have a deadline and a reason why. Which I guess you can count as a fourth thing, but really those three things: obtainable, specific, and a deadline. Then they become real goals that you can start to assign tasks to. Which
again ties into sort of everything we've been saying. If we have these goals and we're writing them down, then they're sort of already not becoming wishes, because now we're writing them down. Like, we don't want them to be wishes. We want to write them down, and now we're taking actions. We're creating a plan. So we're taking concrete steps that, like, this isn't just a wish for me. It's like, I want it, like it's a want, but this is how I'm going to get it. So here's my steps.
Now, you might not achieve your goal, right? Let's say I want to pass the ARE. So I'm going to take a test every 2 months, and therefore it'll take, well, you might fail one, right? So you might not have achieved that goal, but you will then at least know that you did everything you could to achieve that goal. And then you can reassess, well, why didn't I pass all 7? What did I do wrong? I dedicated 5 hours every Saturday to studying. Was that not enough? Or I only went through the exam simulator once. Was that not enough? You can start to reassess why you didn't make it. It's okay not to achieve a goal as long as you're on the path towards achieving it. You shouldn't beat yourself up too much. What bothers me is when I meet so many people who have wishes and not goals, and they go, "Gosh, I want to have my own firm someday." Well, what does that mean? Someday? You mean like in 100 years? What is that? Someday is nothing.
So
I get very mad about it.
Here's a perfect example. And it ties back to in the CSE coaching program of the goal that I have is just for these candidates to take the exam who join the program. I could say I want to pass all 7 divisions of the ARE in 6 months. That's an admirable goal, right? It's a lot of work, but that's a goal. I would rather, personally, I would set the goal up to be, I want to take all 7 divisions of the ARE in 6 months. Like, to me, that's my goal, and I know I can achieve that goal, and I just need to take the steps in place. Now, me passing all 7 divisions, obviously I want to, but I don't care. I want to take all 7 divisions in 6 months, and if I don't pass a few, I'll take them afterwards. But I know if I set the goal of I'm taking all 7 divisions in 6 months, 6 months from now, I'm going to be a heck of a lot closer to achieving my goal than I was now.
And you'll also be more confident about it, right? Let's say you don't pass SPD or BDCS, right? I have a friend who she got tripped up on that one a few times. You don't pass BDCS, but you'll feel a heck of a lot more confident going into it again, right? To take it again, because at least you've gotten it out of the way. And plus, you'll also know that you set a goal for yourself, you followed through, and you achieved it. I can't stress enough how important it is to write down these goals and just put them into action. And once you start doing that, writing out your goals, setting deadlines, being specific, and starting to assign these tasks, suddenly you've got a clear roadmap to success.
And with this whole 60-day retake that they implemented last year, or I guess a year before, it's sort of a no-brainer. 60 days is nothing. 2 months goes by quick. So if it was me, I'm sitting here planning my 2016, I would say, okay, my goal is to take all 7 divisions of the ARE in 6 months. And once I finish that last ARE, I'm going to go out and I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to go to dinner, whatever, take a little vacation, whatever it is to celebrate that goal. Whether or not I pass all 7, I don't care. I just want to achieve that goal and I want to celebrate it and I want to acknowledge it because that's a huge goal. And then if there's a few I didn't pass, I'll deal with that afterwards and I'll just get them done.
When I took the California supplemental exam, so I'd already passed the AREs. I moved to California, and then I had they called it the oral exam back then, but the California supplemental exam. I told myself that when I passed, not if, but when I passed, I was going to have a party to celebrate. Right. Invite all my friends, have a whole party, and that's what I did. And I remember studying for it, and just like you're tired and you worked all day, and now you're studying, you're trying to stay awake, and but I remember visualizing that party and how good it would feel being at the party and having like people smack me on the back and congratulate me. Like that helped put me through. Visualizing success helped me kind of get through the mundane, grueling tasks it took to study for.
Well, and a good point. Visualizing success will get you through even those times when we don't, pass a particular division that we thought. But we're still staying on track to our goal. We'll eventually get there. Success will happen. It might take a few months longer than we desire, but it's still going to happen if we stay the course.
Right. So, I want to run through an example for you of how to assign tasks. Let's say you have a goal. I want to learn SketchUp. Other people at work are using it, and I want to use it too. And during the day at work, I can't pick it up. I can't just start on it. And I don't want to say to my boss, I'm going to whip out a SketchUp model starting from scratch. I want to learn it first on my own and then come in. So my goal is to learn SketchUp. Well, when do I want to learn it by? Well, I'd like to learn it by my birthday in August. Okay. And why do you want to do it? Well, I want to learn SketchUp by my birthday in August so I can start to do more design-oriented stuff at the firm. That is a clear, tangible goal, right? With a clear delivery. Now you can start to set action steps. So some of the action steps could be, I'm going to watch one of the YouTube videos, the tutorial videos, a night. They're short, and I'm just going to do one a night. There's like 60 of them there. I'll watch one a night, every night, for 60 days. Another one is I'm going to download the trial version today and have it on my computer so I have no excuses. I need more, I want to do it with an external monitor, so I'm going to find an old monitor and plug it in and get it set up and ready to go. I'm going to find an online support forum somewhere, so I have that ready to go. You basically want to remove all of your excuses and all of your obstacles. So each of these action steps starts to really make a plan. And then you might even add, and I'm going to spend 4 hours every Saturday morning practicing SketchUp. And I'm even going to pick a real project in the office to model on my own. And I'll do it all in secret, right? If I want, I don't want to tell the boss yet. I'll tell some of my friends, I guess. But I want to find an online support system. I want to find tutorial videos. I want to have the software ready to go. And I want to block out time on my calendar to do it. Boom, 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 boom. Now I'm just implementing it. Now just every week I'm just doing it. And then the last task that you could do would be, and then in August, now that I know SketchUp, I'm going to schedule a lunch and learn for the whole staff and show them what I've done with it so I can show off my new talent. A series of simple tasks that anybody can do. And for any goal, you can imagine what those tasks would be. Boom, 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 start to put it on my calendar, and suddenly I've got a clear roadmap of how to achieve this goal, why I want this goal, when I'm going to complete the goal, and what I'm going to do to achieve it. It's beautiful, and it's so simple.
It's beautiful, and it's so simple, and there's no reason not to be able to achieve it because, let's say, for example, we're talking SketchUp, whatever the goal is, but what it requires is just putting time in. And if we put the time in, we're going to be able to learn it. And we need the action steps and all that to do it. Another Jim Rohn quote I have here is, the best time to set up a new discipline is when the idea is strong. This is the perfect time of year to do that. The idea is strong, we're ready, we're motivated. And just like you were saying with the SketchUp thing, download the trial now. Start right away. Just get into it. And don't be like, oh, this sounds great. I got to wrap some things up in a couple of weeks. And, 2 weeks later, I'll check into it. It's not going to happen. Because I've written a bunch of books, I have a lot of people come to me for advice. I want to write a book, but it's taking a long time. Well, what do you mean? Well, I can't seem to make time to finish the book.
And you hear the words people use? I can't make time. It's your time. It's your 168 hours.
Right.
But you don't make time. You only have 168 hours in a week. There's no time to be made. You're given time. And so it's your time to choose what to do with it. So I explain to them, here's the big secret. And I'll usually lean in and whisper. And I'll say, here's the big secret to writing a book. You just spend all of your free time, every waking moment, you're not doing something else, you're working on the book. That's it. That's the big secret.
Right.
You work your ass off, and it sucks for 6 months. It's just hell. And when it's over, you never want to write a book again. That's it.
Right.
And they're like, oh. They thought it was they always ask me, would you take off a sabbatical for 6 months to write? No, I couldn't do that. I can't afford to do that.
Right.
I just worked my ass off. I worked harder and didn't go out and didn't have any fun. We've talked before about, when I took the AREs and there were 9 divisions back then, and I did one every 2 weeks.
Right.
I had no life for those 18 weeks. It just sucked. I didn't go out. I didn't have any fun. I didn't see any friends. It was awful and miserable. I felt like a hermit and a monk. But once it was over, man, it was great because it was done. And I thought, and like you, I thought, well, I'm going to take all 9. If I fail them, then I'll take it again. But at least I'll know that I'll have gotten through them at least once.
I think there's some kind of quote out there, something about the secret to success is do the things that nobody else wants to do or nobody else is willing to do. Most of us are smart enough we could actually write a book, but we don't have sort of the discipline, and we don't have sort of the desire or the discipline to actually do it. And what's funny is, for example, somebody comes to you, they want to write a book, and I'm thinking like, well, how much? I get the desire, but how much time have they already tried doing it? Like they're looking for the blue pill, and there isn't a blue pill. It's like you could ask them, okay, you want to write a book. Have you been writing for 3 hours every day for the last month? Oh, no. Why would I do that? Well, because you want to write a book. That's what you got to do, And they're like, oh, I get put in that much time? It's like, yeah, that's what's required.
Yeah, you don't want to write a book. You want someone to give you a book that you can put your name on is what you want.
That's exactly it. You want a ghostwriter.
Right. So then hire a ghostwriter, and then I guess it'll feel. But really, there's no secret. It's just planning your time, setting your priorities, and setting actionable steps. So for me, it was 4 hours every night, and then all day Saturday and Sunday. That was it. It was awful. And each time, my wife was like, "You're never writing a book again." She was miserable too.
There's another quote out there, and this one I know I'm getting wrong, but it's something along the lines, it took me 20 years to become an overnight success. So it's like that. Nobody becomes a success quickly, much as in the ARE process, much in sort of our career as architects. All this stuff takes time. The people who are successful, they're consistent, and they don't get discouraged by the hiccups that always come along, whether in life or in the ARE or whatever it is. They just keep moving forward.
So this is empowering news. This is good news. It means that suddenly today, now with this knowledge, you can figure out what you're unintentionally spending your time on, see if you can convert those into real tangible goals, set an actual deadline for those goals, why you want those goals, and then start to map out all of the action steps and tasks that you need to do to achieve those goals. You now have this power to do this. So to me, it's exciting. Your brain should be spinning right now with, oh my God, I can't wait to turn this off so I can grab a pad of paper and start to write out my goals and my tasks.
And being specific is, I think, the most important thing you can do for, let's say, I want to do this in 6 months. Turn that around and be like, well, figure out how far 6 months is out from whenever you're listening. Is be like, I want to do this by June 31st, or there's no 31 days in June, by June 30th. Be specific with dates, and I'm going to take it the end of September. No, I'm going to take it September 22nd.
I met a lot of people who say, they'll write down their goals and they'll say, I want to lose 20 pounds in 3 months, but they don't put a date. So 3 months is always 3 months away.
Exactly.
So, it's January now. In March, they'll say, yeah, in 3 months, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. But they keep pushing it out. There's a huge difference between saying, I want to do this by 3 months versus saying, I want to do this by March 15th.
Huge difference. And it's a commitment. And a lot of us are afraid of commitment.
Right. So watch the first podcast, episode 6, about overcoming fear and overcoming obstacles. help complement that. But today, I think we really mapped out how to set a goal, how to look at how you're spending your time, and how to assign tasks to those goals to make them actionable.
Alrighty, well said. A great episode. Thank you for joining us again from Oregon. Hopefully your situation gets settled up there, and they're not going to be protesting in the streets and taking over Portland, because they're entitled to it, I guess.
I think they're just going to bomb everything.
All right, Eric, we'll see you next time. And our listeners, we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the ARE Podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE blog. Remember to plan, practice, and pass.